It's budget time in the city of Albuquerque for City Hall, and so we're working on our budget for this next year. And we wanted to take some time to have a discussion about the budget process and even some details about this year's budget and what we're facing. And I have with me today one of our experts at City Hall on everything finance, on everything City of Albuquerque when it comes to preparing our budget. I'm Dan Lewis, the District 5 City Councilor. I represent the Northwest communities in the City of Albuquerque. Everything west of the river and a little bit north of I-40 there. I work with 8 other city councilors along with the mayor, certainly to put together the budget each year. We have to have a balanced budget, and there are a lot of indicators and factors that shape a budget, and we're going to talk about some of those things. So if you're unfamiliar with the budget process, we hopefully during this time, you'll get to know that budget process a little bit better and also know how you could be involved and how you could help shape that budget and give your input. So we're glad you're here with us today, and we're just going to have a discussion. I want to introduce John Zaman. John Zaman is the Senior Policy Analyst, our Budget Officer, Finance Officer for the City Council. He's been in the city, working for the city for 7 years, and he really is a great asset, great friend and great asset to the 9 city councilors and to our office, and so very glad to have him here. And we're just going to have a discussion about the city budget and the process, and maybe get into some of the details and that I think the public would be interested in. And so, John, let's start with just the budget process, the general budget process, and how it's shaped, how it's formed, and what is it in the timeline. Let's talk about the timeline.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me here. First off, I really appreciate the opportunity to get here and to talk about the budget process, because really it is one of the most important things that the city does each year and that the City Council acts on. The budget process actually takes about 5 months, and it starts January 1st of each year when the Chief Administrative Officer, representing the mayor, meets with each of the city departments and puts together a proposed budget. Over the next 3 months, they work on formulating the mayor's proposal to give to council so that by April 1st of each year, the mayor gives to City Council his proposed operating budget for the next year. The City Council at that point, April 1st, has 60 days to look at it, study it, have staff review it and make recommendations. And then at the end of that 60-day period, by charter, the City Council has to either pass the mayor's budget, amend it, or pass their own budget. And if they don't act within that 60-day period, the mayor's proposed budget goes into effect.
So we're in that 60-day period right now. We just received the mayor's budget proposal a few weeks ago. And we'll start some budget hearings that'll start here very soon. But talk about for a moment the public feedback, the citizen involvement when it comes to the budget process.
Well, you know, public feedback is critical at this point because obviously the budget affects the services that are provided to the community, and that's what government is all about. It was important enough so that whoever wrote the charter, our founding fathers who wrote the city charter, said we had to have at least 3 public hearings on the budget process. And so the City Council set up what's called the Committee of the Whole, which is all 9 city councilors, and of course you're the chair of the Committee of the Whole this year. The Committee of the Whole is going to hold 3 public meetings, one on April 26th, a week from this Thursday, one on May 10th, one on the 17th. And at those meetings, we're going to be discussing the entire budget in detail. Councilors have an opportunity to ask questions, but most importantly, the public has an opportunity to come out or to watch live on TV and give the council their suggestions, give the council their public comment. Also, of course, each councilor goes to their neighborhood meetings. They have an opportunity to meet with their constituents at neighborhood meetings. People can call 311 if they want to give the council input. They can call the mayor's office directly, or they can call the city council offices.
So it's a very transparent process, and there are obviously checks and balances. There's mechanisms in place. Talk about those mechanisms.
Well, you know, the checks and balances, the first and most important check in the entire process is the public, and making sure that the public's informed, because that holds the elected officials accountable. And I know that's big on your list, and I know it's big on all the councilors in the mayor's list. In addition to that, though, there's sort of a natural tension that's been built into the city government structure, just like at the federal level where you've got the executive and the legislative branch, at the state level the same way. Here at the local level, we've got the executive, the mayor, and the legislative, the city council. The mayor runs the city day to day. The legislature sets the policy and has the power of the purse string. So the city council and the mayor are intended to sort of have a natural tension and keep each other in check. and we see that year-round.
You know, and there's a lot of talk about 9 city councilors, and really ideally the 9 city councilors are elected by the people and set up and designed by our city forefathers or city founders to be closer to the people and certainly in tune to neighborhoods, to their district, and certainly the mayor is too as the other elected official. The city council is the governing body, creates the budget. The mayor administrates as the executive of city government, and there is that natural tension, and it should be there. Sometimes we think that that's a bad thing, and I think that we do a pretty good job among the 9 city councilors and along with the mayor of not making things personal. Of really, no, this is about business. This is about doing what's right for the city of Albuquerque. But the tension that's there is supposed to be there. There's supposed to be some conflict. There's supposed to be questioning from the council to the administration, and that's a good thing. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. On the budget, we base the budget on a growth rate of the city. What's the true growth rate of the city of Albuquerque, and how is that? How do we come up with that?
That's a really interesting question, and I think the answer is going to be a little different than most people are expecting. But if you look at the population growth of the city over the past 10 years, and you look at the growth in the square mileage, the area of the city based on annexations and additional property we own now, you see that the city's been growing at about a rate of 5%, just slightly under 5%. And then you go back and you look at the general fund budget from 10 years ago, and in constant dollars, in real dollars, you look at the growth of city spending, and you see that the growth in city general fund spending has been roughly 5% as well. And I think that's an important balance, that you don't want to grow government so quickly that it outstrips the need to provide or is taking in more than it needs to provide services. At the same time, you don't want to grow government so slowly that we fall behind in providing services. And I think what the last 10 years have showed us is that over that 10-year stretch, we're really keeping up with the need.
And we determine that need. So part of the budget is based on the citizens' needs. Obviously, our city government is to be responsive to the needs of the city as a whole, and so we determine the citizens' needs. And how do we? I mean, what are some measures, some methods that where we come up with the needs of the city, needs of the citizens? Because we obviously. We're not copying another city and say, well, let's do this budget based on what this city has done. No,
right.
we're looking at the needs of our city of Albuquerque, and we want the budget to be responsive to those needs.
Right. Now, that's exactly right. And to start off with, I guess, the city has 8 goals, long-term goals. They're called the city's 5-year goals. And a panel of citizens gets together, the Indicators Progress Commission, and they come in, and every 4 years they look at those goals and see if there's still goals that the city wants to push forward. Government excellence and efficiency, public safety, health and welfare, infrastructure, economic development. So every 4 years we take a picture of whether or not we're pushing in the right direction. And then once we decide those 5-year goals, the city sets up a number of what are called desired community conditions and measurements so that each department, each program in each department is measured for output, to make sure that those outputs are going to create the community conditions that we know will further our goals. And so we have this really fairly complex mechanism put in place. And if you look at the budget, the mayor's proposed budget, you'll see that all over the place. Performance measures, desired community conditions, and goals. And that's how we push towards a better Albuquerque.
Excellent. And if we look at the needs of the citizens, and it's there's measurements, there's goals in place. We stop, we make sure that they're updated on a regular basis. But if we were just to develop a budget based on the needs of the city are endless when it comes down to it. And so we have a capacity. We have a revenue capacity. We have a limit, obviously, when it comes to every budget year. So how is that capacity determined when it comes to tax revenue, when it comes to permits and all the areas of revenue that the city receives?
Sure. Yeah, and you know this as well as anybody, and probably better than anybody. The city has growth issues that need to be addressed on the west side, and they're legitimate issues that require infrastructure funding and maintenance dollars. And then we've got redevelopment issues east of the river, and those are critical issues, and they both have to be addressed. From the city's perspective, if we charge a fee, we only charge enough so that we cover the cost of the service that we provide. Government is, as you know, and you're a huge advocate for this, government is not a for-profit corporation. We exist to provide a service at as little cost as possible to the taxpayer. And so when we charge a fee, like a biopark fee or a shooting park fee, any of another number of fees, that fee is calibrated so it just covers the cost of providing the service. On the other side, the taxes that we levy, the property taxes, the gross receipts taxes, those are calibrated so that they provide just enough revenue, given our level of economic activity, so that we can pay for the essential city services. And really, that's it. We're not in the business of generating large surpluses. We're not in the business of taking in more than we need.
Yeah. And I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping those fees low. And I think when you look at other cities, when you look at what we're providing the taxpayer, a lot of the amenities and the services in our city, we have a pretty low fee structure in a lot of those areas. And I know that does change, and that has to change. And there are some, I think over the next year, some of those fee structures are going to need to change. And so, those are just going to have to change because of the needs and the growth of the city, and wanting to provide the very best product. But we need to take care of the core spending that we're responsible for, and there's some indicators to help us do that. But some different. Let's talk about the changes in the budget from this year as we look at 2013. We're going to go through a process here, three public hearings. We're going to hear from our department directors. We have been and will analyze very closely what the mayor has presented to us. 9 city councilors again that have that represent different parts of the city and certainly can see different things, and that's why the 9-member governing body ultimately passes a budget. But what are the differences? What are we faced with in 2013?
Well, I think to start out with, the budget that the mayor proposed to the council is fairly status quo. There are no fee increases incorporated in the budget. There are no new taxes. There are no layoffs. There are no position cuts, funded positions, even if they're vacant, that were available last year, continue to be available this year. The budget continues a 1% pay increase proposal subject to collective bargaining for employees making $50,000 or less. So basically, 90% of last year's budget is just carried forward into the F13 proposal as whole cloth. Really what the F13 budget does that the 12 budget didn't do is it focuses on capital and capital acquisitions. Probably the most important of which is the $3 million that was in there last year is in there this year and in future projections to pay for bonds for Paseo infrastructure. Now, the voters are going to decide the funding mechanism for that in November, but last year's budget and this year's budget contain that $3 million for debt service on those bonds. Over and above that, there's another $3 million of one-time revenue carried into this budget that can be used to fund capital projects that haven't been determined yet. That's subject to negotiation between the mayor and the city council, and ultimately a council vote on where the funding goes. But so that's $6 million. There's another $2.2 million for police vehicles. I think everyone knows how critical it is that the police have reliable vehicles, and I think everyone knows that the police ride their vehicles very hard and they demand a lot of them. So at any given time, the police fleet needs 30, 40, 50 vehicles replaced. This budget provides $2.2 million to replace roughly 45 vehicles.
Yeah.
So
the first $3 million, this is something that, again, it's reoccurring expense. It will go to debt services there, but it's specifically in the area of the Paseo I-25 interchange. We've committed to that. It'll go before the voters, certainly. And we could talk in just a moment. I want to talk a bit more about that project. The remaining, the additional $3 million, and the idea behind that is over a period of time, over the last, say, 10, 12 years in the city of Albuquerque, to be able to help us make sure we're covering our general budget Those capital funds have been taken over in the general budget. And again, whether people agree with that or not,
Right.
the idea is that this $3 million we put back into capital. It's not been appropriated yet, and maybe a good portion of that may not be appropriated in this budget, but will specifically go to capital projects that we need.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction, is that that second $3 million is one time.
Non-recurring.
At this point, it's non-recurring, and its use is really subject to whatever the council appropriates it for. It could be for capital, it could be for reserve.
Now, just explain recurring and non-recurring, because I think just everyday people that look at this budget, it's one of those concepts that might seem easy to understand, but talk about how it relates to our mandate to have a balanced budget in the city.
Now that's important, because we can't run a deficit budget.
That's right.
So we've got to have a balanced budget, and the budget has to balance on two levels. First off, the bottom line. You can't spend more than you've got, period. Yeah. But second, you've got to match up recurring revenues with recurring expenditures. And the easiest way to bring that home is you're at home and you're trying to live on your paycheck. The paycheck, the dollars that you bring in every week or every couple of weeks, that's your recurring income. You're trying to make sure that you don't spend more than your recurring income. Okay, so your groceries, your mortgage, your car costs, your gasoline and things like that, all of that needs to be covered from your recurring income. If you're spending more, then it's like someone at home drawing down their savings account. You don't want to spend savings for recurring expenditures, otherwise after a very short period of time you're going to be in trouble. And it's the same way with the city. The city has revenues that we're confident are going to recur year in and year out, and we peg expenses that we know are going to recur year in and year out to that revenue. That's called a recurring balance. And it's important that the city balance its books, because if we don't, on a recurring basis, if we don't, we could be in a position fairly quickly where either we have to do layoffs, increase taxes, increase fees, and no one wants to go there.
I think it's good to know for the people of Albuquerque to know that we don't operate like the federal government.
Yeah, we can't just we can't just put out an IOU.
That's right. So there's good checks and balances there, and certainly we have responsible people that are making sure we're doing what's right for the taxpayer here too, and for the city. Let me just mention a few things in the mayor's budget proposal. And you already mentioned some of these. No services that are cut, no job reductions. Vacant positions that were funded last year were funded this year, and hopefully to increase some of those funding for some of those positions that were not funded in the past few years. No increases in fees that are in this budget proposal. Certainly no increase in taxes. You mentioned about the 1% raise, small budget increase that allows for the negotiations for our employees. And the idea is that those that make $50,000 or less, a 1% raise that's budgeted in there for that, if that were to be negotiated. And there are some other things, but this is what we'll talk about in our budget hearings in the next three budget hearings. But let's talk about Paseo del Norte for just a moment. Paseo I-25. This is something that 3 years ago when I was running for the city council, I represent the west side, about 100,000 people in the northwest, just in the northwest communities that use that interchange, along with Rio Rancho. When we look at the infrastructure, when we look at the growth projections, I serve on the COG, Mid-Region Council of Governments. When you look at just the 2035 projections of what it will look like, and it really is a disaster scenario. I don't want to be too drastic about it, but when you look at it as it exists right now and the kind of growth that we'll experience in the coming years, and so so not only when you look at that, but also just the immediate need of West Siders when it comes to that interchange, when it comes to getting to work. And by the way, there's a lot that we're working on the west side to change that. Just land use, number one. We want to bring jobs to the west side of Albuquerque so that people live in these great communities on the west side where they want to live, where they could also work and not make those river crossings. And so that's an aspect of it. Certainly improving our infrastructure, adding lanes. We just completed the extension of Unser Boulevard, which is a great project. So glad we were able to get that done, but provided another north-south arterial to get West Siders to I-40. Our largest river crossing, of course, is I-40. But Paseo was a large river crossing, and that's it's a very congested interchange. how are we going to get this project done? I mean, I know that we made some big steps to put $50 million. It's now going to go before the voters, it looks like, in November. That'll go a long way toward it. The state has committed about $30 million. The county has come in with about $5 million. We need to make up, we have a little bit more to go to be able to fund this. But to fund the first phase, which I think is going to get us a long ways, the flyovers that are going to take care of the capacity of that interchange for the next 15 years. How are we going to get this done?
Well, first off, I haven't run into anybody who hasn't acknowledged that Paseo I-25 is a critical need, a critical infrastructure need, 150,000 cars per day through there, and that intersection has failed. It's critical to the northeast, it's critical to the northwest, it's critical to every part of the city. It's so critical that the city council has put $50 million on the ballot this November, and as you said, $29 million, almost $30 million from the state, so we're up to 80 should the voters approve it. Another 5 from the county, there's 85. It's that last little bit, the last $7 or $8 million that we really need to move the project forward. And without getting into specifics that I don't have right now, I'm sure that if we get that 85, we can find the next 7 or 8, because this is a priority for the federal government, it's a priority for the state, for the county, for the city, and for the COG. So I think with all of us working together, we can get it done. It's just a matter of finding out how much we need and then solving that problem.
Right, and we really do have great people that are working in the city of Albuquerque. Michael Reardon, our director of the DMD, and others that have done a great job in helping us be able to put it together and helping to be able to get all the local municipalities together, along with the federal government and certainly the state, to be able to get this project done. So hopefully sooner than later we'll see this. And also, it's interesting that the largest job center in the state of New Mexico is right there at the Journal Center, right at that Jefferson Paseo interchange there. So something that I think is close to West Siders because they see it every day. It's something that they have to deal with every day, but certainly, and I appreciate you saying this, that it's whether it be every part of Albuquerque, I think it's critical, and not only to the city of Albuquerque, but it's very much a regional project, a regional issue. Public safety, when it comes to our fire department, our police department, I think you have an administration and certainly 9 city councilors who great concern about making sure we're providing the kind of public safety that people need. When you look at again, when you have infrastructure needs, you also have amenity needs, you have public safety needs in the west side, a growing area, in all parts of town. But again, certainly something that's at the forefront of what we deal with a lot of times. What are we doing in the budget? What are some things that we do in a budget process to make sure that we're making sure that public safety is funded and that they have what they need? They're the first responders, they're the ones that are on the front line, making sure that we're safe. And so in the budget process, what are things that we do in the budget process to make sure that they're well funded and taken care of?
Well, we look at, the police budget and the fire budget combined total about 50% of the city's operating budget. So obviously it's a huge priority for us. And I and my staff look at those budgets in detail, ask detailed questions, and pass that information along to the decision makers, the city councilors. But in looking at police and fire, we want to make sure that the questions and the issues that come up year in and year out that are relayed to you through your constituents and through phone calls and through 311 are addressed. And probably the most important is we want to make sure we fund enough officers. We want to make sure that they have the equipment they need to get their job done, to get the information they need to stay safe, and to keep the citizens safe. And I think that, at least in the past 7 budgets, the cycles that I've been through, the council's been very aware to make sure that public safety, police and fire is critical and is well funded. I know that one of your priorities, Fire Station 17, a ladder function at 17, is fully funded in this budget. Right. And if it weren't, we'd find a way to get it done. Right. Rescue 8, which is a new rescue unit over on Wanted Bow in Council District Number 9, is fully funded. 1,100 police officers are fully funded in this proposal. Overtime is fully funded in this proposal. The fire department's census is at 673, I believe, which is one of the highest levels in history. So this proposed budget reflects a high priority on public safety, which I'm sure is where the city council is going to be.
And real quick, another budget priority. animal welfare and libraries. We have a lot of departments like this that are doing a lot with less.
Right.
And so certainly they're stretched thin in a lot of ways, but they provide such great services to the city. So this from 2012 to 2013, how was some of these projections? How will this affect libraries and animal welfare?
Very well. I'm pleased to say that the proposed budget continues the positions that you funded by amendment last year. So there's 5 animal handlers and some additional library positions, 4 I believe, in this base budget. And then in addition to that, there are, and let me see, I wrote it down, I don't remember right off, there are 2 new animal handler positions in the budget and 3 new positions at libraries.
Gotcha.
So we're taking steps towards moving back and restoring some of the cuts. And the changes that the council made via your amendment last year are carried forward.
Gotcha. This has been, certainly a process. That's and hopefully this has helped people understand a little bit more about the budget. Again, John, appreciate your expertise, and we have a staff on the 9th floor at City Hall. They're just professionals and very very classy professionals that are very very skilled, very experienced, and I know that 9 city councilors depend on you all tremendously. And it's very, very much a joy to work with you.
Well, thank you.
I've enjoyed every minute in my time here at City Hall, and certainly are very thankful for the opportunity to serve, and appreciate you and the work that you do, and so many others that do such a great job for the city. If you have questions about the city budget, certainly you can call our office. Let me give you the number to my office, 768-3189, 768-3189. You can call, ask us any questions about the city budget process coming up. And then also, please feel free to join us at the committee of the whole meetings that are coming up. I think the first one, did we mention the first meeting? It's coming up in a few weeks. I think
there's the first one a week from this Thursday on the 26th of April.
April 26th.
There's a second one on May 10th, third one on May 17th, and then final budget adoption on May 21st. The public's invited, actually encouraged to come out to all of those meetings and give you their opinion.
Similar to the committee of the whole is a 9-member, all 9 members of the city council. These are special meetings that are specifically related to the budget. We do encourage people to come down and give public comment to learn about the process. And you could sign up, just as other meetings. Right. You could come sign up for public comment. So we do encourage people to do that. Thanks again, John. And thank you all for joining us.